I'm Matt Tibbitts. I'm a first-year student at Harvard studying economics, and I'm from Ludlow, Massachusetts, and this is my first time voting.
Matt, let's start off by talking about the town you grew up in and how that kind of shaped your political perspective.
Yeah, so I think growing up in Ludlow, people from out of state, when I talk to them, they think Massachusetts, pretty liberal, kind of straight blue. But when you look at Ludlow and look at Western Mass, we see more conservative people there. And I think growing in that environment really shaped me. It made me look at things that, a lot of things that we disagree upon, but also things like public education that we want to see more investments made no matter where we are in the spectrum. And kind of move our country and our state forward no matter what. And I think that kind of lacks in the national sense with so much argument and yelling on both sides. But I think Ludlow's a really example of how we can move forward and not always agree on certain things, but find things that we do agree upon and make our town and our city and our state a better place.
When did you first learn about voting and the role that you could play in democracy? Did you have any sort of role model for that?
Yeah, so I think I thank my parents a lot for that. I remember, being a little kid and their polling place was my elementary school. So I remember, getting the day off for a presidential election and going with them to poll and kind of like peeking at my mom's ballot as she's like swatting me down or, some race that she had no clue, who's running because it doesn't really matter, some down ballot race that people don't look too much into. And she's like, well, who do you want to vote for? Pick one. And so I just really enjoyed it. I thought it was pretty cool. And then, as I moved through high school and we talked more about, civic engagement and how, a lot of votes, especially in history, have came down to like 1-2 votes. You can look at 2000 in Florida with Al Gore and George Bush coming down to like 400 votes. And just the impact that your one voice can have from like a simple thing that you do. And that was something that advocated me. So when, I went to the DMV to get my driver's license, I pre-registered day I turned 16. And was just kind of waiting for that 18th birthday to come so I could finally actually vote.
And why was that so important for you to even pre-register? Because that's something that even for myself, I learned recently that was even an option. So what was it that made you want to pre-register to make sure when you were 18 you could vote?
Yeah, so I think it's something that's pretty cool about the state of Massachusetts that we allow that. And also, it's kind of like the government finally saying that like, you're an adult, we want to listen to you, and not like, oh no, give it a few more years and then, you're up to the task. I think it's something that says, we want to start you getting ready, you're going to be voting soon. And so, I really want to take that opportunity. I think that me and a lot of other of my friends, every opportunity that we've been given, we've kind of snatched up because, they're rare to come by. And I think, I've been a big advocate of lowering municipal voting ages to 16. And I think that, incentivize a lot of other people like me and like my friends that, want to have a part and engage and, create a better town and a better state that, just don't have the opportunity to actually voice our opinions.
So now you were talking about the influence that your parents had on you voting, and there were people in your circle that were supporting Trump in the 2016 election. Which way are they leaning towards now and why?
Yeah, so I think that in my family, we're all kind of a middle class gang. My dad was in the Air Force right out of high school. My mother was in one semester of college before she had to drop out to take care of my grandmother who was in a car accident. So, that makes me a first-gen student, which is kind of scary going into college. But, I think in 2016, they were kind of fed up with kind of the Democrats and the Republicans almost overlooking the middle class of America. That group of people that struggling paycheck to paycheck, but not so much that they're going to get those government benefits and not, having enough money to actually be successful enough to worry about it. And I think, Trump tapped into that with letting people know that, he's there for you, he's going to speak up for you. But I think over the past 4 years, my family's been really conscious of not much has changed. And especially in the age of COVID where, a lot of the middle class and a lot of the poorer parts of our community are struggling like entirely. When my parents were laid off and, we had to go on unemployment because there's no money coming in and the government's just not there for you and Trump's not there for you. I think that speaks to, broken promises on his part, and that's why the majority of my family is now supporting Biden because he sees him as someone who's going to bring us back to supporting the middle class and bringing more money and more jobs and more economic growth to that area of people.
And now are you supporting Biden as well?
I am, yes.
And how were you able to come to that decision for yourself?
Yeah, so I think that in my senior year of high school, I worked for the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education in the state as a board member, and I worked a lot in public education and public education policy. And just looking at that one distinction that's so important to me because it gave me the opportunity to, go to Harvard, and I'm very thankful for that public education that brought me there and, gave me those gains that I could make. That Trump just isn't in favor of supporting that or bringing more money into that. You can look at his Secretary of Education, someone whose children don't go to public school, who's never been to public school, who doesn't visit public schools. And then, I go to look at Joe Biden, whose, wife is a teacher. and who's dedicated to putting a public school teacher in that position as Secretary of Education and making sure that we're doubling or tripling our investments in public education and public higher education to make sure students like I can afford to go to school and not have to worry about being in debt for the rest of my life because I want an opportunity to better myself and make my family proud and make my town proud.
Now, you were able to vote in the primaries. Was Biden your first choice in the primaries?
Biden was not my first choice in the primaries. I think in our younger generation we tend to lean a little more progressive, and my dad was looking at Pete Buttigieg because he's an Air Force guy, my dad himself, and so we looked at that Pete's Army record there and bringing about some change there. My mother supported Biden, but I was really looking at someone like Bernie Sanders or Elizabeth Warren, who represents a more progressive wing of the party. But when I look at Joe Biden now, I think that he's embraced some policies that move our country forward. And I'm not just one of those people that's Trump or Biden. I think that even if it wasn't Donald Trump, I'd still be supporting Biden because you can look at him, how he interacts with people. There's kind of a viral video going around now of him with a Parkland school shooting survivor, their son, and him just hugging him, and then you play that against Trump mocking a reporter with disability. I think that really speaks about who I want to represent me and who I think is a good representation of our country.
What are some of the issues that you really value and want to look for in a presidential candidate, and how do you inform yourself on those issues?
Yeah, so I think, like I said, public education is one of the biggest things that I look for, as well as, like I said before, supporting the middle class and the lower income people in America. Trump always brags about his tax cuts and sort of things, which did bring a little bit of money to the middle class, but not as much as it gave tax breaks to the rich, who, and at least in my opinion, don't necessarily need them. And I think that just looking at the facts and trusting the media, which is another thing that the Trump campaign kind of goes against. I think Biden really embraces the fact that we need to trust our media and be invested in good, public sources of media that can present the facts to us. And I think that that's something that we've taught a lot in high school. When we kind of look at two facts and we go, how can you, discern what's opinion from what's fact? And I think that's something that's needed more in schools, but also something that, candidates need to embrace and understand that the media is presenting you with facts, and we need to be able to open and interpret those facts as we see, and not, just kind of ignore them and go off on what we perceive to be true.
So currently you're interning for a local campaign. Do you think it's important, especially for your generation, to be involved in local politics as well as national politics?
Yeah, I think that's something that's really important. I have friends that support Donald Trump and support the conservative side of our platforms. But I think it's important to realize that you can have friends that are different political beliefs than you, and still be friends and still have civil discourse about it. But some of them don't want to go out and vote because they're afraid that their vote for Donald Trump doesn't really matter in Massachusetts. And to some extent, I agree with them. I don't think anyone's out there saying that Donald Trump is going to win our state. But also, there's a ton of down ballot races that could come down to that one or two Republican voters, and could kind of flip a state rep or a state Senate seat, or even one of the ballot questions that can kind of put us on a different track here in Massachusetts. And so, I think there's a lot of conservatives out there who want Donald Trump to win, and if you think he's not going to win, go out and vote for some Republicans so they can represent you in the state legislature, and vice versa on the Democrats' side. If I think that if I'm scared that Donald Trump might win the presidency, I'm going to go out there and support wholeheartedly my Democrat, candidates who are running for state rep to make sure that no matter what happens at the national level, I think Massachusetts is going to keep driving forward and not kind of go back to where we are in Trump's America.